Mark Rogers TV talking Big 12 football with another huge weekend on tap. We bring in Chris Ross from Land Grant Gauntlet. You can join him right there at thelgg.com for the very best in Big 12 football coverage. Chris, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, middle of the season, getting into the meat of the schedule for the majority of the Big 12. This week looks even better, and we got Bedlam coming up. Just going to be a great slate of games here.
The one point I will make about the Big 12 before we dive into last weekend's results and what it means is that it seems as though the Big 12 delivers for us the most consistent number of big matchups each and every week, or most weeks, where if you circle any other conference, you look at about 3 to 4 games as being huge. And it just seems like the cycle of the number of teams involved playing each other creates more consistent good matchups where you can say on particular weeks, the SEC's got nothing to offer. The Big Ten's got nothing to offer. Okay, well, we're looking for Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, Penn State, et cetera. The 3 or 4 teams in each conference that you would point to playing each other. And as has been your point and my point by extension, some of those teams don't play each other in the other conferences. So you don't get to see Clemson play Miami, for example. But in the Big 12, they all play each other. Therefore, they produce more big game matchups. So last weekend, that meant we saw Oklahoma survive, and this much credited to the conference against Kansas State. The Sooners survive on the last play of the game to win 42-35. Of course, Oklahoma State, talk about survive. They survive in Austin 13-10 in overtime, in which turned out to be a much different game than most of us anticipated, not necessarily in terms of competition, but in terms of the scoreboard. And, well, I'm going to use the word again because it applies. Survive. West Virginia at Baylor inexplicably blow a 25-point lead and need to defend a 2-point play to win it 38-36. So for you, what jumped out over the weekend?
Well, those 3 games you just mentioned, all of them a dogfight. And in the Big 12, you have 8 teams that can legitimately win any given Saturday. And that's really the strength of the conference. I think we agree. We talked a little bit off air. Texas looks like a top 25 team. They're going to have a hard time getting there because of their win-loss record. Baylor might be the best 0-7 team in the history of college football. You know, you look at the way they've been playing lately. And even Iowa State, a team that has been consistently at the bottom of the conference, is really showing massive strides and making big improvements this year. Got a big win down at Texas Tech. After the blowout last year, you thought that the Red Raiders, I mean, they're also a team that outperformed expectations so far this year. I really thought that I changed my mind. I thought Iowa State would get the win going into the season, but during the season, watching how Texas Tech played, I flipped my decision and went with the Red Raiders. But Iowa State proved me wrong. They're a very capable team. West Virginia, we still don't know what their limit is. They could kind of mix things up, and as you said, every week provides a good matchup, but the 3 top teams in the conference, TCU, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, are all entering the meat of their schedule. So the games are just going to get better from here.
Chris, if we were having this discussion 4 or 5 weeks ago and we said Oklahoma almost lost to Kansas State, and had they lost, that would have ruined the Big 12's chances, because it almost seemed like Oklahoma was the only team that could survive the Big 12 and make it to the college football playoff, and Oklahoma State would be the second candidate. Otherwise, who in the world could possibly emerge from the Big 12 to a college football playoff appearance? Now, I think because of the level of play within the conference, and then also some of the big victories, i.e. Oklahoma over Ohio State and a couple other ones to complement that one, that the Big 12 has gained some status and some credit, I would hope, across the nation and by the College Football Playoff Committee, to where that Oklahoma loss would have been damaging. Had they lost to Kansas State, sure, because they're still a contender for the conference championship, but they've got a second loss. So yes, that could have been very damaging for the conference had Oklahoma then run the table, but it's not as damaging as it would have been perceived to have been 6 weeks ago, because we thought, how in the world could anybody else emerge from the Big 12 except possibly Oklahoma State? But that's just not the case now. TCU is obviously the contender outside of the Big Two that could possibly run the table, or even if they trip up, still make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, going into the season, I did try to warn you that the Big 12 is being underrated. That their last season, 2016, was about the worst season that you're ever going to see this conference have. But a lot of teams were looking like they were going to be improving. The thing we got wrong, at least right now, is we knew it was going to be a 3-horse race. It's just we thought it was going to be Kansas State instead of TCU. The Wildcats have not performed well. Now, last week they certainly impressed against Oklahoma, and that game seemed to come out of nowhere, and they look like the team that we thought they might have been before the season. But again, I just go back. That's the strength of the Big 12. But as far as playoff chances go, yeah, Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma State's being really underrated for their playoff chance. I don't know why the TCU loss is still hurting them in the polls. TCU, obviously very good, number 4 team in the country. But you look at, the coaches poll in Washington, a team that hasn't done much of anything, is ahead of Oklahoma State, who has one of the best 1 losses in the country. Kind of surprising, but any of those 3 legitimately have a chance. I do agree that if any of them take a second loss, that would make it very, very hard for the conference to get into the playoff. I don't know if the Big 12 can put forth a 2-loss team. I think they might be out at that point. But if one of these 3 can get through with just 1 loss, then I think their chances of getting in are very, very good.
Yeah, the Washington example is a clear example of preseason perception lingering even 7 weeks, 8 weeks deep into the season. It's inexplicable. Washington has beaten no one, and their loss is awful at Arizona State. The Sun Devils looking better the last couple of weeks, but still not a good loss compared to losing to TCU by a touchdown. And then Oklahoma State has better wins, i.e. Texas, than anything close to what Washington has. So that's a mystery to me as well. All right, interesting position of where the Big 12 sits right now. The Pac-12 is in dire straits in regards to the college football playoff, and then the other conferences look to have its viable candidates.